All right. Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to this Moodle Academy webinar on Mahara and Moodle, a match made for learners. My name is Richard Lefroy. I'm part of the Moodle Academy team at Moodle, and today I'll be joined by Kristina Hoeppner, the Mahara Project Lead at Catalyst IT. As we all know, Moodle allows for easy integration with a whole host of other tools, giving educators and learners the flexibility in how they teach and learn. And portfolios are a great addition to Moodle as they put students in control, letting them decide how they want to showcase their learning and share their reflections. So this session will introduce various types of portfolios and their benefits, explore some portfolio examples, highlight the integration of Mahara with Moodle for authentic learning and reflection, and provide an outlook on Mahara's future developments. So with that, Kristina, thank you very much for being with us today, and I will hand over to you.
Thank you so much for the introduction, Richard, and also for giving me the opportunity to chat with you today. Prior to us starting the recording, we had just mentioned when all of us had started working with Moodle. And so I've been Moodling since 2007. And these days, not so much anymore, but I'm still always keeping an eye on the Moodle community because that's always a good one to be a member of. And of course, because of our integrations, there is always a connecting point, and many of our clients and also community members are using Moodle themselves. So I'm the Mahara Project Lead. I have been working for Catalyst in Te Whanganui Atara, Wellington in Aotearoa, New Zealand since mid-2010 and have become officially the Project Lead at the end of 2014. And the Mahara Project team, the main developers, are situated here in Wellington in our office, where we deliver the platform to our community members around the world. And so what I wanted to do today with you is just also find out a bit more about yourself, because it's a webinar, so I feel like we should be having some interactive components, get you to share what your experience is with portfolios, and then we are looking into what some main types of portfolios are, and also what some portfolios can look like. Richard has kindly offered to share links in the chat on my behalf to make that easier. And when you have access to the slides, you will also be able to just click on the images that are in the slides and be taken to those examples to explore them yourself further. And then, of course, because we are here in a Moodle Academy webinar, we, of course, also look at how can you actually integrate portfolios into Moodle. And then find out from you what you might want to use portfolios for. Either you've already been doing that, or maybe you're new to the practice. Lastly, I'll also share some of our plans for Mahara. But let's do the first activity. What is your portfolio experience? So what I'd like you to do is use the annotation tool that you see on your screen, and you can pick a pen or you can pick a stamp and place yourself here onto the sort of timeline, not really timeline, but on the continuum of you're here because you want to learn more about it. You haven't really been doing anything with portfolios just yet. In the middle, we have you're ready to go. You have already heard about portfolios or maybe even about Mahara already. And then on the right-hand side is you've taken off. You have been working with portfolios already and just might want to get some more information. And so the first annotations are coming in, and they are pretty much all more firmly in the you are here, show me more stage, or on the way to get ready to work with portfolios. And one is also on the taking off part of it. So that is wonderful to see that spectrum. And so please do feel free to share any of your experiences also in the chat. As Richard had said, we can, I'm happy to take questions in between. If there are some that sound a bit more complex and you put them into the chat, then we might hold off until the end of the session. So I think everybody has been putting their mark on the screen. So Richard, if you do also want to take a picture, please do so now. I've already taken mine. And then we'll be clearing the screen so that we can get on to the next question.
Good to go. Yep.
To go. So, second question for you then is, because a number of you were in that first part of the continuum, you here might not really have been using portfolios much. What has been holding you back so far? Is it that you don't know about portfolios? Is it that the technology is too difficult? Is it that your curriculum doesn't support it? Please do use the annotation tool and select the text option and then write your text. Ideally, not everybody in the top left-hand corner, because then you'll be sitting on top of each other. But find a space where you just want to share why you haven't been using portfolios just yet. Give you a minute for that.
I've had a few responses in the chat, but if you can figure, yep, there we go. They're coming up now. Mm-hmm. Adam, if you can figure out how to pop your bit of feedback, because that's interesting as well. You could pop that on there too.
Yep, we went over to a subscription model that makes kind of a mandatory contribution to the open source project. And also, secondly, there's university just had a small installation, no need to use it at the time. Yeah. So maybe there are some ideas that I can share today that can show you what you might be wanting to use portfolios for, what you can use portfolios for in order to get inspired by them. Okay, communication keeps dropping with the provider. That's certainly something I hope we can help you with at Catalyst if you need an external provider. Because in contrast to Moodle, where Moodle HQ is its own company, we don't have a company called Mahara or Mahara HQ. We are situated within Catalyst IT in New Zealand and do also offer all sorts of services around Mahara, including also through our offices around the world, in particular in Australia, Canada, Ireland for the EU, and then also in the UK. But we also have a network of partners that can, and some of them also support hosting. Okay, at some point it was an experiment done, yeah. And chicken and egg situation, yeah. Okay, let's take a screenshot so that we can add those answers into the slides then for posterity so that we know what people have said. And move on to the next slide. And I guess I had not cleared. Oh, thanks for clearing the annotations, Richard. Okay, types of portfolios. Portfolios are a very complex practice. So oftentimes we look at it from an ed tech, from the tool perspective, but actually I'd like us to think more around what we would want to use portfolios for rather than going indirectly. Here's the technology, use it. And so for me, there are typically 5 big types of portfolio types that show how differently portfolios can be used. And so the first one is for learning purposes. So we have a learning portfolio. That oftentimes relates to tracking progress, checking on development, and it's a very reflective portfolio because we do want to look at the progress over time of that learning. However, the assessment portfolio is also very important because typically portfolios are used in a university or a school context, and therefore students do want to get a grade for the work that they are doing, and then oftentimes are more motivated through that. And by using portfolios for assessment, authentic learning tasks can be incorporated more easily into formal learning contexts, so that students summarize the project and then reflect on their experiences and what they might want to do, and then get a grade on it. We also see portfolios quite a bit used in work integrated learning situations, such as internships, externships, placements, practicums, whatever the language might be that is used in your area or that you prefer to translate it into English, because they are a wonderful vehicle to for the students to reflect on their learning while they are at their internship provider. They can pull in their mentor, but they can also just have the university advisor or tutor look at their progress and also give them feedback while they are not at the higher education institution. So really also keeping the connection between workplace and then the university. And so in the UK, for example, and also in Ireland, that is being done in degree apprenticeships, where competency tracking happens in the portfolio. So one college that does that really well is, for example, Griffith College in Dublin, where we have the portfolio be an integrated component as part of the internship or apprenticeship experience. Many of you might be familiar with the Showcase portfolio, because that is often one that is also being used when applying for a new job, so that you're not just saying, yes, I've received this certification and I've done this and done that, but also actually show what you have done, so that a future employer can judge more easily, is that actually content that we like? Is that how we want our potential new employee to work with us, because they see a result or they see how you've approached something. And that is where we are really showing off our achievements. But the reflective element is also still important in order to show that we are learning, that we are reflective practitioners. And increasingly, we also see portfolios being used for professional certifications. So in the past, there was often a tick box exercise that was used potentially already electronically in spreadsheets. However, there was not really any context around, so nobody really knew, well, what was actually achieved, how have they achieved it? And so with the portfolio, we bring in the conversation, we bring in developmental conversations, we bring in feedback from peers, managers can provide feedback, and the staff member themselves that is up for certification can make a self-assessment and reflect on their learning. And all of that is being pulled together in a portfolio, becomes that record of a person who is then ready for their annual or triennial certification. So while we have these 5 different types of portfolios, they do not stand on their own, but they are kind of all together and they can overlap. So we can take components from a learning portfolio in an assessment portfolio. Components from an assessment portfolio can be used in a showcase portfolio and so on. And so since a number of you have said that you are already working with portfolios or have started working with portfolios or had worked with portfolios in the past, I'd like you to go back to the annotation tool and either put a stamp on it or circle an area of the type of portfolio or types of portfolios that you are most familiar with, so that we get an idea of which ones we have. Richard, you've done work integrated learning portfolio. Do you want to say a couple of words, what you've been using it for right there?
Look, I probably can't give too much. So in a previous role at a university, we're actually just sort of beginning to, while I was there, we're beginning to sort of go full steam with portfolios. But I was on the side of supporting, I guess, supporting the academic staff, sort of at the same time I was getting myself up to speed, trying to also help them get up to speed. And that was, it might have, I can't even remember if it was in Moodle days or a different one then. Yeah, so certainly more the background for myself. Yep.
Yeah. And then we have a few responses for learning and assessment portfolio. Does one of you want to say something to that? What you've been using it in particular for? Give a brief example without necessarily mentioning names.
I was one of the people. So quite a few years ago now, when I was working at UCL, we used to use Mahara for the students to develop a portfolio, and then they would get assessed on that. And I believe they also did some peer reviewing of each other's portfolios, but it's been a while, so I can't remember the details.
Yeah, UCL is actually, thank you for mentioning them, Jessica. It's a fantastic example because it is being used now increasingly in political sciences through the work of Kathy Elliott and also Fergus Green, who transformed a couple of their assignments, moved them to portfolios. And it's fantastic to see the results that they are having with the students. They are more engaged. They are getting better results. And so I encourage you to listen to the podcast episodes from them on our podcast, and I'll share the link later on. Or Richard, if you want to find it in the list of links, it's podcast.mahara.org, where you can hear their stories and see what they are doing. We also have a two showcase portfolios and a couple of professional certification ones. Does one of you want to talk to your use of them in those contexts?
Raising hand here.
Oh, sorry, I don't see that. Sorry.
Sorry, I know there's a button to raise hand. I just didn't do that. I just more explored portfolios. We didn't really make use of them, but what I was trying to investigate was a way for students to sort of take the work they had produced in the Moodle site and take it with them in some way, so they could create like a showcase. I don't know if showcase is the correct word or I'm in the right area here, but a showcase of their work. For example, in one writing class, the students learned, the Japanese students learned how to make simple English novels, like a 5-chapter novel or a 10-chapter novel, and I wanted them to take that with them easily, and that became quite a challenge. Without having a portfolio that they could call their own. So I was experimenting with, using the Google Docs as a portfolio, but we never got very far with it. So
yeah, but wonderful for trying. Thank you for sharing, Tom. Yeah. Richard, I've taken a photo of the slide. If you also want to press your button before we move on.
Oh, yep. We have some feedback from Kate as well. I can read it out if you like. So they are saying for professional certification, we have a custom development for staff members, which allows to bring in data from our study information system and Estonian's research portal, which later creates a CV, which they can send in.
Oh, that is wonderful to have that integration available, because that, of course, makes it much easier than to maintain. And what we are doing here in New Zealand for nurses, for example, is that the LMS sends certain data into the portfolio so that they don't need to fill in basic profile information beyond name and email address, but their ward comes with it, the hospital comes with it, their practicing number. So all that information that had already been entered into one system can be brought over. That's the nice thing of the open source platforms that also have web services available, because we can connect those two things. Okay, but So much for the theory. Let's take a brief look at the examples. I am going to go through them fairly quickly. And once you have the slides, you will be able to see them. But Richard also has the links so that he can post them in the chat if you want to look at them directly. And these examples just give you a kind of show a bit of the breadth of what is possible. Creating portfolios in Mahara, they are not giving a complete picture because, of course, we are bound to having public portfolios available that we can show you, but they just give you a glimpse into it. So this first portfolio here is from Dublin City University, from the student Karasina, who created her portfolio for an internship experience that she had. And this portfolio is quite structured. It is based on a template, and she demonstrates really nicely how to also personalize the portfolio. So she's adjusted the colors and the font in the portfolio. She works quite extensively also with images that are interspersed with the text. So really creating a nice experience telling the story around her portfolio. Then the next example that you see here is a final reflection from a student, so part of an assignment that they needed to do, where they also work with text and images in order to structure their thoughts and bring in their experience. And this is a part of a 5-page portfolio, which makes it very nice and easy to step through how the students want us to go through their portfolio, rather than having everything on a single page and a very long scroll. This third portfolio is from the University of the Arts London. And when you go to the homepage of the University of UAL of Workflow, which is their name for their Mahara portfolio site, you'll see a lot of tiles with a lot of different images, and that is all these are all portfolios. So you can click on any of them and get to portfolios. Of course, that being a University of the Arts, there's a lot of portfolios that are very visual, and where students create portfolios still very much with the reflective element in mind. So it's less showcase portfolios because they typically use another platform for showcasing things that is often used in the industry, but they use Workflow for working on their assignments and then submitting their work as well. So on that side, you see a lot of visuals, lots of images and experimentation of what a portfolio could look like. That is also a second very different portfolio here on Workflow. And so even if you just look at the title of the portfolio, you see that it is notes from studio sessions. So it is tracking their progress, writing down what they have learned, summarizing projects they've been working on, and then referencing the images with it. This last portfolio that I'm sharing here is more for learning designers. It is the CMALT review portfolio from Teresa McKinnon, a now retired language teacher from University of Warwick in the UK. And while you can't read the text, you can't read the text, and that is on purpose because I'm only wanting to point out a few things for you, because her portfolio, and now I'm just sorry, have something come up that should not be coming up. Let's jump back into the presentation. Because Teresa exemplifies really well what the portfolio is about and also what language can be used. So she writes, the point at which I realized. So a portfolio is not sharing everything that is on your computer or that you have gone through, but it is making mindful selections and highlighting certain things. She also said, I have revisited each of the sections of my original CMALT submission. So it is looking back, reflecting on what you had done in the past and incorporating that into what you know now, and then seeing how you have evolved and developed. But the portfolio is often not done on its own, but we need feedback and also mentoring, and often these can be extremely helpful. And I already mentioned that we make a selection in the portfolio. So she says, a highlight of my professional development was such and such. So we are never ever sharing everything, because that would be a bit too much. We do want to focus the attention of the audience on the story that we want to tell them. And that is where I find the definition of folio thinking can come in really, really helpful. That's a definition that's a concept that was developed by Dr. Helen Chen at Stanford University. And the definition itself is from Wikisuta's blog entry. And so folio thinking is a process of engaging in the collection, organization, reflection, and connection that leads to a person's ability to speak intelligently and concisely, that is, to tell stories about one's learning experiences, what they mean and their value, and how these experiences relate one to each other. So in contrast to a lot of activities, if you're thinking about Moodle activities like the quiz, where you have separate answers and every question might be about a different topic, what we do in the portfolio is look at the learning holistically and tell the learning story. And that can be one view of the learning story, that can be one excerpt of it. That doesn't always have to be everything, because it is always contextualized. So that telling of stories, I think, is a really nice way to look at the portfolio creation, because that also shows that we are having that context, that we are looking left and right and see what is happening. So if we are taking that down to some of the activities that can be done in Mahara, but also with other portfolio platforms, to be honest, at least some of the components, is that, of course, first, we need to create some learning content. We have some learning evidence. So that typically happens outside of the platform, because that is the learning in the classroom, that is learning online, that is learning at home, informally, also non-formally. And the portfolio really comes in once we are getting to the stage of the collection. So we collect all that learning evidence, so that it might initially be stored on a computer or on a phone, and then you can upload that into Mahara. And you don't yet have to kind of curate over anything yet, just collect everything, because you don't necessarily know if you need it at a later stage, depending on what portfolio you're creating. But the third step, that's then the important one in the portfolio process, where an archive really turns into a portfolio. That is where we are doing the curation. That is where the reflection comes in, where we are contextualizing why is a particular learning evidence more important than another one. Why do we want to highlight this? Why is that experience important? So that we are really drawing these connections for ourselves, and if we do have a portfolio that is shared with somebody else, for the audience. Now, the next step is conversations. Teresa had mentioned that she had feedback and mentoring from others, which was helpful. And that can happen in Mahara directly in the platform in the form of comments on individual artifacts or on portfolio pages entirely. Or it could also happen in the hallway or in other conversations. It doesn't always have to be on a platform. However, we do provide a space where those conversations can be captured in order to make them part of the portfolio and see if anything of that feedback, for example, is being used when progressing and when making changes. And the last activity that can also be done in Mahara is connecting with others. And that means that you, for example, can create group portfolios. And you can work with others on the portfolio. You can engage in forum conversations, and then really also set up small communities of learning, if you like. And that is something that not every platform can do. Of course, in this area, there might be the biggest overlap with Moodle, because of course in Moodle you also have forum discussions, and you have the wiki, and you have workshop activities and the like. And so as learning designer or as educator, you then decide in which platform you would do what activity, but we do provide some functionality also for that connection part. Since I've now mentioned Moodle, let's actually bring that in, because we are here to see how Mahara and portfolios in general can be used with Moodle. And my focus, of course, is a bit more on Mahara itself. So if you're looking at Moodle and Mahara, they can be connected. We've actually had a connection for many, many years in the early days, or until very recently as well. It was done via Moodle networking, which was originally developed to network multiple Moodles, but actually could also be used to connect Mahara to Moodle or Moodle to Mahara. These days, it is mainly through more modern web services that the connection is established. And we are leveraging, in particular, LTI for that, to make the authentication. But we are also, especially with the Mahara assignment submission plugin, are using standard web services that are available in Moodle in order to have a better experience for learners and also educators. Because if we were to use the external tool, all that Mahara could do is send a grade over into the Moodle gradebook, but educators wouldn't have their regular grading methods available, such as a grading workflow or external grading sheets or rubrics. And so that's why we have developed the Mahara assignment submission plugin for Moodle that is currently also being upgraded for Moodle 4.5. In order to make it more convenient for educators to work with Mahara through Moodle, and that is the one that I'm going to show you now in the next few minutes.
Kristina, sorry, just before we go on, there's just a very, very quick question from Adam back in the chat, who's just asking if it's still MNet and or LTI in terms of that integration.
Yes. So the Mahara assignment submission plugin exists for both MNet and LTI. However, we pretty much stopped the development on the MNet one about two and a half or so years ago, once LTI became more important. And also currently with PHP 8 dropping support for XML RPC, which is the protocol on which MNet is based, it is not possible to work with MNet there anymore. But we do have code currently in testing for transforming an MNet Mahara assignment activity into an LTI one without losing the links. So I just need to finish testing on that before we can put that into the plugin itself to make that transition easier for academics that are using the assignment submission plugin. For authentication purposes, it's a bit easier because LTI can just be added to an existing account. So you wouldn't necessarily have to remove the MNet authentication, though it is advised to also not have old data hanging around in the database so much. But yes, we definitely do want to encourage people to use LTI instead of MNet because MNet is also being deprecated by Moodle, and they are just waiting for us to give the sign to say, yes, we are not really supporting it either because it's just an old protocol that is generally not supported by PHP anymore. And so let's assume you have you could still call it Mahoodle if you like, because that is connected Mahara plus Moodle, but so as not to get into any potential trademark issues, we are not really using the term so much anymore, but just say Mahara and Moodle. Now, let's assume you have installed the Mahara assignment submission plugin on your Moodle site. Then you will see a new option called Mahara. Like with any other language strings in Moodle, you can rename it if you renamed your Mahara site to something else, like ePortfolios in the name of your university. You can also decide whether portfolios should be locked from unlocked after creating, or whether they should stay locked, and also whether they should automatically be archived. So that's a functionality that did not exist in the Mnet version. Now, when a student logs in, goes to the activity, they see all the portfolios that are available in their personal portfolio area and can select the one that they want to submit to that assignment. Now, when the teacher logs in, they do have a new column in the gradebook where they can see the submitted portfolio and they can click on it. Once they click on it, they are automatically logged into Mahara and can look at the portfolio. They can leave comments in the portfolio itself if they wanted to comment on the individual artifacts or on pages, or they could, of course, use the regular simple grading screen in Moodle, leave feedback comments there, give a number grade, or, and that's why I really like the assignment submission plugin, is that they could use a rubric and therefore really use advanced grading methods that also work with how they want to assess the students rather than just giving a number grade there. And so that is why I feel the Mahara assignment submission plugin really gives us a bit more opportunities for working with portfolios in Moodle, because we have more of these typical assessment options available and are not just bound by a very limited set. Now, I'd like to hand it back over to you for a couple of minutes. And you are free to share any notes that you have in the chat, or just take some notes for yourself. Or, of course, you can also grab the microphone and share with us if you have already started exploring portfolios. How do you think you could, in future, maybe incorporate portfolios into your own teaching and learning? And then the second question would be, what else do you want to learn? What is still missing in order for you to make that decision, so that we could potentially follow up after the webinar with you on that? Just a couple of minutes for that. Adam, please do go ahead.
Hi, thank you. Yeah, beat on this camera again. There we go. Sorry, percussive maintenance required. It's getting a bit old. Yeah, thank you for that. The problem that I actually faced continuing using Mahara was that my access to updated Mahara code sort of dried up. I'm not a developer, and I'm also not a decision maker at the university where I work who can actually authorize, the mandatory contributions or anything.
Right.
But in order to get it used, I actually have to build a working version, show it off to the higher ups, and get them to then agree to. Oh, there's the camera gone again. I'm just going to switch it off. And then I have to get them to buy me a new camera, but also to make that mandatory contribution. In order to get them to agree to make that contribution, though, I have to show them a working product and show them what it can do. Because in Japan, when you say portfolio, the word portfolio, to Japanese people, that means a place where teachers can write a comment once a semester on whether their students are doing okay or not okay. And that's all it means.
Right.
It's a really weird way that they perceive that word. So in order to show them that, no, it's so much more than that, I need to have a working product. When I lost the ability to have that working product, I lost the ability to recommend Mahara to anyone. So I'm just wondering, is there any way I've looked on the Mahara page and it says if you're a developer, sure. If you're making the contribution straight up, sure. But otherwise, I seem out of luck. Is there a way I can actually become lucky again?
Yep, you can send me an email and then we can talk, because we can definitely give you access to one of our demo sites that does not reset on a daily basis, so that you could also connect your Moodle site to it and go through the workflow itself.
Okay, yeah, thank you. In the past, actually, by the way, we had it. It was mainly a student-driven idea. When we actually were using it in the past, the students actually came up with the idea, and they said we wanted a place where we can show off our creations, and Mahara really fit the bill for that. So, sorry, I mentioned that earlier, but I had a mouthful of water. So.
No, do get in touch with me so that we can then see what would work best for you and how we can help you with that.
Sure thing. Definitely will follow up on that. Cheers.
Thank you. Does anybody else have ideas of how they might want to use portfolios, either again or fresh, looking at the 5 different types that I've shared earlier in your own teaching and learning? Jessica.
I realized after you showed the example of CMALT that I actually did my CMALT in Mahara as well. So forgot about that. And that was a really nice reflective process. So I think that it could work quite well for when we do internal training to make sure that we're recording our learning and then able to share it more easily with others. So
yeah, I think there's a really good potential to incorporate it into annual review cycles, not just for those people that do have that naturally built into their job descriptions, like nurses who are, in order to be registered nurse, need to go through certifications, or pharmacists or doctors and the like, but also use it, even if it is just for yourself, in order to keep track of what you have been doing, what you have been learning, and then want to take that as a basis of conversation with your manager.
Yeah, so I guess what I would want to learn more about would be maybe how, once the information is in there, can it be exported into other formats that I might find useful going forward as well. I wanted to hold on to it.
Yeah, and that is a really good question as well, because you might not stay in a particular job for eternity, and therefore being able to keep your portfolio also outside of the platform is certainly something that we do support with an HTML export and also PDF export option. And PDF export is really also that it brings all the videos or audio files that have been uploaded, brings them along so that they can also be played later on.
I didn't want to use that as an example because I love my job at Moodle Academy and I don't plan to leave ever. So
if you want to move into a different position at Moodle Academy, even for that. Yeah. Okay. Thank you so much for sharing, Adam and Jessica. Let's take a quick look at what we are up to in the Mahara project over the next few years. And this is certainly a graphic to look at more later on if you want to revisit it. I also put a link to gave Richard a link to a video that we can share, where I talk through the roadmap. We established it in late December 2023 and are now kind of between the short term and the medium term. Medium term has started and long term is really our view of the next 5 to 7 years. And that's what you see here on the roadmap is really big picture functionality or changes that we want to make in Mahara in order to keep it a contemporary platform and also to keep it relevant for those creating portfolios. And so everything that has a tick mark here is already done. The other things that have the hourglasses, they are in progress, and things that don't yet have an additional icon, they are yet to be tackled. And of course, we are also going to do roughly an annual review of the roadmap in order to see if anything has shifted, is becoming more important, or where we might need more time. In particular, the UX review, usability review, and also creating a more contemporary portfolio look is our focus right now and over the next year, in order to make it easier to use Mahara without needing to read the manual or half of it, and therefore improving also the onboarding and easier access to creating those portfolios. But we are also looking into adding some new features, as well as seeing how we can incorporate AI meaningfully into portfolio practice, which in a way is often, I find, quite different from the possibilities that are in the learning management system, because the content could be pre-written or drafted, whereas in the portfolio we do work with reflection. So ideally, the content is written by the students themselves. We have lots of ideas, love to talk about them, whether some are more important than others, because that'll also help us in the development process. Now for Mahara 2504, which is coming up in April, so 2005 in the month of April, we are making a number of usability improvements already, but the big change will come in 2026 because we just need a bit more time to implement all of the changes and can't do it one at a time. But similarly to Moodle, when Moodle had its big UI improvements, they did need to come in all at once. After that are, of course, still iterations, but the big change needs to come in one version of Mahara. But we are therefore focusing also on laying quite a bit of the groundwork and also putting in some very nice features like the continuing professional development enhancements to bring in more of the visualizations that we can have there, new icon set, and also we merge some content types. So there we'll be offering a number of webinars in April where I will be introducing the new features. They will also be recorded. They will be offered in different time zones to make it easier for people to attend live. And then we will be talking about them more in the upcoming months as well. I've already mentioned the podcast earlier, so if you want to listen to how people are using portfolios, and also irrespective of the platform they are using, in order to get inspired and get some ideas for learning and teaching with portfolios, as well as some very practical tips by students and also educators, please do listen in. Create, Share, Engage is an audio-only podcast, so perfect for not when you don't want to look at a screen, but still want to do some professional development. If you prefer the written word, we also have a monthly newsletter that I'm sending out every Wednesday New Zealand time, where we are sharing upcoming events, networking opportunities, and also resources. And we also have the community newsletter as well that comes out every quarter year. I did also promise to share some resources with you, some additional free resources to the ones that I've already shared. So they are here on this slide, and Richard will pop in the links to them into the chat. And of course, once you have access to the slides, you can click the images. These are some of my favorite resources, really, because they are short reads. They are not long ones. There have, of course, been lots of academic articles written on portfolios and the like, but these here really are very practical tips and ideas of how to implement portfolios. We have the digital ethics principles for working with portfolios. There's the field guide to portfolios, where each chapter is just about 5 to 8 pages. You can learn from Dublin City University and other universities on how to use portfolio-based assessments and incorporate them in a variety of study programs. And then there is also an entire small publication on the learning portfolio, a game of snakes and ladders, also published by DCU, that really gives a nice portfolio or review of the literature and also ideas of what can be done with portfolios. if you happen to have a favorite resource that you would like to share, please do feel free to put it into the chat or send it to me via email, because we can definitely include those also in the resources for this webinar so that others learn about them as well. And if you haven't seen me online yet or have been following me on LinkedIn or elsewhere, my contact details are on the screen and will be in the chat shortly. So you can contact me via email, Mastodon, LinkedIn, or Blue Sky. And I'd really love to hear from you of how you're using portfolios and if you'd like to share your story. But no matter the platform that you're using, please also get in touch, because then we could schedule an interview for the podcast maybe in the future at some point. And so that is pretty much everything from my end, because what I wanted to do today is give you a brief overview of what portfolios could be used for, how they can also complement the work that you're doing in Moodle, because it brings those authentic learning tasks more into the classroom. It allows the students to tell the stories in a very personal way of creating portfolios that represent themselves, that show the context of their learning content and learning evidence, and then start having conversations around that. We've then looked at how we can integrate Moodle with Mahara or Mahara with Moodle, in particular for assessment purposes, in order to keep everything nicely in one place for the educator. And then I've also shared some resources with you. And so that then means that I'll be handing over to Richard to wrap up today's session.
Perfect. Kristina, thank you so much. That was a whole lot of information, which was just fantastic. So thank you so much for coming and sharing your time with us. And as Kristina, and we've mentioned a few times, if you haven't managed to keep up with everything in the chat, all of the links and resources, we're going to make these slides available very, very shortly. You'll be able to go and find them in the same place that you signed up for this webinar, and that contains those links and resources if you've missed those. Obviously, for anyone else watching the recording later, go and find the slides as well, and you can get access to those. The recording will be available in the coming days. And I am now just going to take a couple of minutes, if that, to just very, very quickly wrap things up, and then we'll send you on your way to enjoy the rest of your Tuesday. All right, so hopefully you have enjoyed the session. And if so, we'd love for you to consider getting involved further and help us grow by contributing to the development of Moodle Academy. You can do this by visiting our Get Involved course, which you'll find on the front page of the Moodle Academy site. You can suggest ideas for new webinars and courses, and you can vote on ideas that have been suggested by others already. Just as we've seen today, with Kristina, we're always on the lookout for community members to help present webinars and also to co-create short online courses for Moodle Academy. And we would love your help making Moodle Academy more inclusive. So if you are able to, please go to our Translate Moodle Academy course, and you can get started with helping us translate our courses and webinars into other languages. Of course, if you could please help spread the word about Moodle Academy by telling your colleagues about the courses we offer and the events and webinars that we run. When you do complete a course, you can earn a badge. Educators might like to think about getting involved with the Moodle Educator qualification, previously known as the Moodle Educator certification. You can take the Are You Ready for the MEQ quiz, and one of our Moodle certified partners or service providers will support you through the qualification process. Also, keep an eye out for the Moodle Administrator qualification, which is going to be available shortly.
Now, basically.
Now, which is available now.
Yes.
There we
We have to
go.
update our slide.
All right, that is it. That is all we have for you today. Again, Kristina, thank you so much for joining us today. Hopefully everyone has found this useful. Thanks everyone for your questions and your input. And we hope to see you on the Moodle Academy course forums and in our upcoming webinars again soon. Thanks again, and we'll see you next time.